Right. So, I guess I could get started with this. My name is Cole Mayer, and this is my challenge that was given to me by my big that I don't know yet. I guess we'll figure that out later. So my name's Cole. Um, as a little basic start to our little journey, some basic stuff about me. I love video games, music. Recently started getting into badminton, and I love that. Um, my major currently is IT, and then I have a minor in film. All right, to continue with a little bit more of my background, I have one full sister and two half sisters, and currently have two dogs, um, which are named Uno and Burger. I kind of forgot to write about them in here, but I'll just plop two little photos in front of you guys so you can have a little bit of an idea what they look like. All right, and I guess now I'm just gonna go over like a little bit of a like a little bit of a timeline so you can kind of get an a broad understanding of like where I've been throughout my life because it kind of gets confusing to be honest. But let's begin. So I was born in October 20th, 2006 in Manila, Philippines. I was born there, raised by my grandpa and my grandma for a little bit, but after that, for about in 2007, I moved to California, and then I began my life with my mom and my dad. Um, I was there for a few years. Then I moved to Japan. Japan was where I experienced most of my childhood growth. Um, and a lot of my like the foundation of who I am as a person really comes from my youth in Japan. Around 2016, I moved to Virginia, and I was there from 2016 to 2019. Once 2019 rolled around, I moved to a country called Bahrain. Um, I know a lot of people might not know where that is. I'll get into that in a bit, and I'll get into why I move around in a bit. And then after that, I moved back to Virginia in 2023, and I've been in Virginia since. So yeah, um, so let's begin with my life in California, because honestly, I don't really remember much of my baby time in in the Philippines. So, anyways, after I moved away from my grandparents in the Philippines and started living with my parents, I was about 3 years old, 2 years old. I I wish I could give you a date, so we'll just put it as small child. Um, then at that time, I don't really remember much of my life in California. Even then, I do have one vivid memory, which is what I'll draw on the board. Um, I went to this Wendy's with this like funny looking like Shrek figure in my hand, and I remember like refusing to eat a chicken nugget that my mom gave me because I thought the Wendy's nuggets kind of tasted gross as a kid. But yeah, I don't really remember much of my time in California. That one memory for some reason has always stuck in my head, even until like now. But yeah, um, after a few more years of living in California, I moved to Japan, and Japan is where I started most of my school career. So the reason why we moved to Japan is because of my dad's job. My dad, ever since I was born, has been serving in the Navy, and it actually up until this year, in 2026, my dad is planning on retiring. But because of his job, we constantly kept moving around, and it constantly introduced me to different cultures, different lifestyles, and all that. Growing up in Japan, of all places, was a very interesting dynamic for me. The people there their cultures are so different from how things are done here in America. And it honestly really broadened my perspective on the idea that people grow up in different conditions. People grow up with different lifestyles, and that's good. That's a good thing. Living in Japan, I it was around my kindergarten years all the way up until my third grade. And this is where I kind of built the foundation of my childhood or something like that. Um, a lot of my I'm trying to remember a lot of the notable things about childhood. I can't really get too much into it just because it's a whole story to get into things. But for point of reference, some of my favorite things that I liked as a kid when I was living in Japan was Pokemon. I've loved collecting Pokemon cards. I loved watching the show. I never really played the games because my parents wouldn't let me, but it's whatever. And I loved Yokai Watch. I don't know how mainstream or how well known Yokai Watch is in America, but I loved Yokai Watch as a kid, and I loved the funny little ghost little guys. Jibanyan was awesome. I really liked the samurai one specifically of Jibanyan. I thought he was really really cool. I collected the little medallions and stuff. It was awesome. And I also loved Gundam. I loved the little model kits. I still do build them actually. Still one of my big hobbies. But as a kid, my dad would always buy a model kit and then build it, and then I would play with the little figure. It was really cool, seeing all the model kits that were out there back then. But yeah, Japan was cool. I really liked it. It's just a very different way of growing up compared to living in America. But yeah, on to the next thing. Speaking of America, that's where I moved on to next. So after living in Japan for a little bit, I moved to Virginia. Chesapeake, Virginia was the place of my residence. I moved there in 2016, me and my family, to make our summer interesting because we moved during the summer of 2016. We landed in California and decided to take a ginormous road trip all the way from California to Chesapeake in Virginia. It took the entire summer to get through that trip, but I got to see all these amazing things like the Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, New Orleans. I'm trying to remember much of it. My memory with some of these things are kind of bad because, I don't know, I guess it really just didn't interest me as a kid, which I kind of feel bad about on hindsight, but you know how it is. But once we moved to Virginia, we stayed in this little apartment for a while until our house was being built, because when we moved to Virginia, we decided to get a house in a neighborhood that was just up and coming, so we just had to wait until our house was finishing construction. So we stayed in this apartment. While we were staying in the apartment, a hurricane, I don't really remember the name of the hurricane from 2016, but the hurricane in 2016 hit us hard. Our apartment was flooded with water. It was kind of bad. Thankfully, nothing was really damaged, but I just remember the fact that there was just water seeping into our apartment because we were on the bottom floor of this complex, so it was kind of bad, but it was okay. We got through with it. After a few years, or not few years, after a few months, our house finally finished construction, and we finally got to move in, which was awesome. It was a beautiful little townhouse, and that is actually where I still live to this day. But it's an awesome house, and I love it. So while that was happening, I started school in this little elementary school in this little elementary school in the area called Western Branch. That name holds a lot of memories to me, and I hold it very dear to me. A lot of the things, no. Um, Western Branch and just going to an American school was overwhelming as hell for me as a kid. It was just a very different style compared to the school that I went to in Japan. It was just completely different. People acted different. People were scary. It was just a new dynamic for me. And I was also a very rowdy kid, so I kind of stood out a lot. But I made friends, and it was awesome. Two of my closest friends that I met in Virginia was this guy named Joseph, and I love that guy. Unfortunately, we don't really talk as much anymore, but we were like the closest of friends in 5th grade. And then in 4th grade, I met this girl named Nadia. She was one of my first friends that I ever really made in Virginia. And she was so sweet, and we did basically like everything together, and I just love that. She was also the only person I really knew in person back then who played Overwatch. I guess Overwatch was like not really a thing that many people played back then, especially in that age, I guess. But in 4th grade, I was fully jumped onto the Overwatch train, and I was playing it all the time. It was awesome. But yeah, so back to moving again. In 2019, I moved to a country called Bahrain. Bahrain is this tiny, tiny little island off the coast of Saudi Arabia, and it is just this tiny island. For point of reference, it's like not even like a third of the size of like Virginia, maybe like a quarter, not even. It's tiny. It's like a city over there. But Bahrain is where I moved to. It's where my dad was stationed to next, and it was just a really rough move. I made a ton of friends, and I finally felt like adjusted to living in America, and being told that I had to abandon and leave all of my friends that I genuinely felt like a good connection to stung really hard. It hit me like a truck. I remember the day of leaving, but moving into Bahrain, my dad was telling me that it's gonna be great. The lifestyle that you'll have there, the house that we'll live in, it'll be amazing. And he was just trying to cheer me up. So we get there, we move, and it's just this beautiful, like, bustling city with like giant skyscrapers and this very different just style of architecture, and I was just so like whoa by it. And yeah, so we stayed in a hotel for the first few weeks of our time there because we were still trying to figure out what place to live in, and then we eventually found a villa to live in. We stayed in that villa for a little while, but while we were there, I went to school. I went to this school called Bahrain Middle High School, which is a American school run by DODEA, which is the Department of Defense Education System. It was really cool. It basically was just like it was basically just like an American high school and middle school combined into just like one building. Also, it's an elementary school on top of that. It was really cool. I met a lot of my really, really close friends here. A lot of my foundational and like closest friends that I still talk to this day, I met at this school. This is also where I found my interests and my hobbies. I really discovered and found my interest in film while I was in this school because they had a film class, and it really made me just like interested in the subject. Because my awesome teacher named Mr. Dinkler, he was just a really awesome teacher. He really gave me like all the things I needed to fully understand film. But anyways, that's just me rambling. But yeah, Bahrain was awesome. It's a very different environment to live in, especially coming from America and going here. It's a it's a big adjustment. But while I was here, um oh wait, actually I'm gonna but while I was in Bahrain, one of the unfortunate things happened. A little thing called COVID. I don't know if anyone remembers it. It was kind of bad. Um, but while I was staying in Bahrain, COVID was happening, and everyone was terrified. Quarantine, staying inside homes, online school, and all that. Um, this is where a lot of my core and a lot of my strongest memories are from COVID. I remember the late nights on Discord with my closest friends. I remember playing Roblox. I remember this is when Friday Night Funkin' was getting jump started. Everyone was on that and playing all of the new songs, all the new mods. This is when my Rainbow Six Siege phase was at its highest. I was playing Brawl Stars all the time. I was just playing video games to pass the time, because COVID really didn't let us go outside, so we just had to make do with what we had. And to make life a little bit bearable, my closest friends that I met in Bahrain, Andrew, Henry, Sebastian, Jaden, these were the people that stuck by me throughout COVID and made the entire few years that COVID was going on actually bearable. I can recall so many memories of just staying up at 2 a.m. and just playing Roblox and just absolutely just melting our mind away. And there's so much I wish I could do to go back to those memories, because those were some of the best points in my life, honestly. But we always gotta move on. But yeah, they made my COVID, they made it bearable, they made it fun. But after COVID ended and I was back into school, my parents were telling me that, hey, we're moving again. And after the countless memories and friends that I made here in Bahrain, it really stung even harder this time, because I felt even closer to these people than I ever felt with anyone else before. So it was just upsetting that I had to leave everyone all over again. So I was fully preparing myself to say goodbye to everyone in Bahrain. Took a while, but it is how it is. And then eventually we moved back to Virginia. So back to Virginia, it's a whole journey for me going back to Virginia. Abandoning all of my friends, it really stings. It hurts, but Virginia had new horizons for me. This is where I'd be starting my junior year and my senior year of high school. My first goal when I first moved to Virginia was to get my first job ever. I was so excited to get my job. The first job that fully interested me, that I found that also hired me, was Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A was my first ever job. I actually still am employed there to whatever date it is currently. In 2026, March 3rd, 2026, I am still employed there. But yeah, that was my first ever job. I was so excited to be finally making bank for myself. I was finally able to buy all the things that my mom wouldn't let me, because it was just kind of dumb purchases, but you know how it is. So I'm back in Chesapeake. I'm back. I have a job, and school starts, and I'm back in Western Branch, actually, of all places. So I'm back there, and it is an even bigger school. There are thousands of kids around me. It was terrifying. going from Bahrain to here, because to keep in mind, my old Bahrain Middle High School had maybe around 200 students, and you go from 200 students to 2,000, and I was just terrified. Everything seemed so overwhelming. I remember my first day at that school. I remember at lunch I sat alone, but thankfully someone came up to me. They tapped me on the shoulder, and I realized it was my ex-girlfriend from middle school. I kind of forgot to mention it earlier because I'm kind of just going over the broad stuff, but her name was Maddie, and she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, are you like my like ex-boyfriend from like middle school?" And I was like, "Yeah." I sat down with her, and then she introduced me to all of her friends. It was people like Haley, Naima, and Tristan, and these people were the people who became my first ever friend group back at Branch, and they just built the foundation of like my entire like new life here. It was just so much fun being with them. I remember some of our earliest memories, and they're some of my favorite memories to this day. Branch was a interesting time in my life. There were so many ups and down moments. I met so many amazing people like Maddie, Haley, Naima, Tristan. I reconnected with an old best friend from middle school, Jahi. One of my best friends, Riley, and Gavin, and Reese. These are some of the closest people that I still have to this day. And they're the people that I always rely on for anything that I ever need. And I love all of them to death. They helped me get out of my shell. They were the ones who stuck around for me for my ups and my downs. And honestly, I don't think I could ever repay them enough for all they've done for me. I'm trying to not get all sobby, but yeah, they made my time in Branch so much more fun. But on top of all of that, I actually took a part of some extracurriculars this time around in high school. I forgot to mention it earlier, but I did band starting in high school. 9th grade, I started playing saxophone, and I kept with it all the way up throughout my high school career. And in junior year, when I moved back to Virginia, I rejoined concert band, and then I also joined jazz band, and then I also joined this group called Trium, which is like this musical honor society. And then in senior year, I joined marching band, which was both a terrible time in my life, but also one of the best moments in my life. It built character. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but it was a very fun time of my life and a very sweaty time of my life. But yeah, Branch in Virginia just in general was a very interesting time in my life, and I just love all the friends that I made there. I don't think I could ever repay all of the friends that I made there enough for what they've done for me. But now that that's all over, I guess now I'm at GMU. All right, and now we're up to the present. Currently, I'm still studying at GMU. From the point of this video, I'm a IT major with a minor in film, and I dorm on campus. GMU's very far away from where I live. Chesapeake is over 200 something miles away from Fairfax, so it took a lot of strength out of me to decide to want to come out here. But I figured the distance away from my family would help build character, so I thought it would be a good thing. I met a lot of amazing people out here. I don't want to get too much into the detailed things, because I feel like my story is still being told out here, so I'd rather give it some time before I continue. But yeah, GMU has been great so far. I joined the Green Machine to honor my musical interest of high school and keep up with it. And then now, recently, I just joined the FCA. I figured getting in touch with I figured it would be a good way for me to be in touch with being Filipino, and also connecting with some people, and making new friends. But yeah, that's my life so far. Things have been good, things have been bad, and I guess it's kind of just up in the air, and seeing what's gonna happen. I hope you guys found my life interesting. I wasn't expecting this as my challenge, to be honest. It kind of threw me off, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Yeah.